Right now, somewhere in the world, someone is closing their eyes and folding their hands. They are not doing anything. No muscles are moving. No words are being spoken out loud. But inside their skull, something enormous is happening. Your brain is rewiring itself in real time. And the strange part is this. Ancient priests figured this out 3,000 years before neuroscience had a name for it. You have probably prayed before, even if you don't call yourself religious. Maybe it was a whispered please right before bad news. Maybe it was a childhood habit that never fully left you. You assumed it was just words, just a ritual. But the real answer is far stranger. Prayer is not just a spiritual act. It is a measurable, physical event, and it changes the architecture of your mind. Let's start with what your brain actually looks like when you pray. In the early 2000s, a researcher named Andrew Newberg began scanning the brains of Franciscan nuns and Tibetan monks while they were deep in prayer and meditation. He used a technique called SPECT imaging, which tracks blood flow to different regions of the brain. What he found surprised even him. During intense prayer, activity in the parietal lobe dropped sharply. That's the part of your brain responsible for spatial awareness, for knowing where your body ends and the world begins. When that region goes quiet, the boundary between self and surroundings starts to blur. People don't just feel calm, they report feeling connected to something larger than themselves. Newberg didn't just find a feeling, he found a mechanism. Here's the part most people don't expect. This isn't unique to any one religion. Newberg found nearly identical patterns whether the subject was a Christian nun reciting the rosary or a Buddhist monk meditating on breath. Different words, different gods, same neurological fingerprint. Why? Because prayer isn't really about the specific words. It's about repetition, rhythm, and focused attention. Three things your brain is exquisitely built to respond to. Think about your ancestors for a moment. Long before churches, before scripture, before anyone wrote a single word down, humans were already doing this. Kneeling at dawn, chanting under firelight, repeating the same phrases over and over until they blurred into rhythm. You might assume this was just superstition, a desperate attempt to control an uncontrollable world. But there's another explanation. Your ancestors may have stumbled onto a biological tool before they had any concept of biology at all. In the 1970s, a Harvard cardiologist named Herbert Benson noticed something strange in his patients. Those who prayed or meditated regularly showed lower blood pressure, slower heart rates, and reduced levels of stress hormones. He called this the relaxation response, and he proved it was the physiological opposite of the fight or flight state. Your body cannot be in deep prayer and high alarm at the same time. The two states are mutually exclusive. When you pray, you are not just calming your mind, you are shutting off a stress system that, left unchecked, quietly wears down your heart, your immune system, and your memory. So ask yourself this: why would a behavior that lowers stress hormones and slows the heart show up independently again and again in cultures that never spoke to each other? Ancient Sumerians did it. Ancient Israelites did it. Indigenous cultures across every continent did it. That's not coincidence. That's convergent discovery. Different peoples, separated by oceans and centuries, arriving at the exact same biological hack. This is where the story gets even stranger. The Book of Psalms, one of the oldest prayer collections in human history, is built almost entirely on repetition. Read it closely and you'll notice the same structure again and again. A statement of distress, a repeated plea, a shift toward gratitude. This pattern isn't accidental poetry. It mirrors almost exactly what modern cognitive behavioral therapists now call cognitive reappraisal, a technique where you consciously reframe a distressing thought until your emotional response to it changes. The ancient authors of these prayers had no access to a psychology journal, but they had noticed something true about the human mind, and they encoded it into ritual because it worked. Here's where the science adds one more twist. A psychologist named Barbara Fredrickson has spent decades studying what happens in the brain during states of gratitude and awe, the same emotional territory many people describe during prayer. Her research found that these emotional states don't just feel good in the moment. They physically broaden your attention and build long-term psychological resources, things like resilience, social connection, and creative thinking. She named this the broaden and build theory. In simple terms, positive emotional states don't just soothe you, they expand your capacity to handle future hardship. Ancient prayer, without knowing any of this, was quietly training the exact same muscle. So picture an ancient believer kneeling in a mud brick house 3,000 years ago, hands raised, eyes closed, repeating a phrase passed down from their mother. They believed they were speaking to God, and they were right to believe that mattered deeply to them. But underneath that spiritual act, their parietal lobe was quieting, their stress hormones were dropping, their emotional resilience was being rebuilt, one repetition at a time. Meaning and mechanism operating together, neither one canceling out the other. This raises an uncomfortable question for the modern world. If prayer works, at least partly because of rhythm, repetition, and focused surrender, then what happens when we strip that ritual out of daily life entirely? Look around you. Most people today don't pray daily, even those who identify as religious. Meditation apps have exploded in popularity precisely because people are searching for the same neurological state that prayer once provided, just without the theological framework. They want the parietal lobe quieting. They want the relaxation response. They want the broadened attention and rebuilt resilience. They just don't always want to call it prayer. Maybe that's the real discovery hiding underneath all of this. Ancient priests weren't naive. They weren't simply performing empty rituals to appease an angry sky. They were, whether they knew it or not, running a functional program for the human nervous system, refined over thousands of years of trial and error, long before anyone had a microscope or a brain scanner. Every generation tweaked it slightly. Every culture arrived at strikingly similar tools: kneeling, chanting, repeating, surrendering control. You don't have to believe in anything in particular for this to apply to you. The next time you feel your chest tighten before a hard conversation, or your mind spiral before a decision you can't control, consider what your ancestors already knew. Close your eyes, slow your breath, repeat something true, even something small, until it settles into rhythm. You might not call it prayer, but your brain won't know the difference. And for a few quiet minutes, in a mud brick house 3,000 years ago, or in your car outside a hospital tonight, the same ancient mechanism will still be doing exactly what it was built to do. Thank you for watching. Let me know in the comments down below if you guys have any suggestions for the next topic I should cover.